than we all anticipated, which I am very happy about.
Yes, exactly. Gratefully so. Absolutely. Did you get a chance to watch some of the performances for the inauguration?
I caught the repeats. I mean, it was very, very well done. The fireworks display was unbelievable. And, it was really good to see so many people come together in a peaceful way.
Absolutely. I loved all the dancing. I can't get enough of like TikTok dances. So just to have that whole like compilation of people dancing, I absolutely loved that part.
No, it was really, really great. And, here's to an amazing 4 years.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And well, since we're talking politics, we might as well bring in our first guest.
Yes. So Governor Phil Murphy was in Washington this weekend for the inauguration of President Joe Biden. There's been a lot of speculation that he will join the Biden administration. But as far as we know right now, he is running for re-election. The Republican challenger, who is seemingly taking the lead, is former Assemblyman Jack Ciattarelli. He has already secured the party line in Camden and Gloucester counties and has county chairman endorsements in 12 counties. Jack joins us now live to talk about the campaign. Jack, how are you?
Hey, good morning, guys. Great to be with you.
We're so happy to have you here this morning. It's been a long time since we spoke, since the Columbian Foundation dinner 2 years ago, when we honored you as being one of the upstanding Italian-American citizens in the state. So it's really cool to talk to you now as probably the Republican candidate for governor.
Well, listen, this is a very exciting development. I can't remember in my lifetime when we had, for all intents and purposes, an uncontested Republican primary to go up against an incumbent Democratic governor. So I'm very happy for the Republican Party, and I'm particularly excited for the voters of New Jersey. We've got a 10-month one-on-one here with Phil Murphy.
Yeah, no, that's great. And you've been on the campaign trail for a long, long time. So I know that you really have a pulse on what the issues are. In meeting the citizens of the state, what do you think is the number one issue?
Well, certainly the administration's handling the pandemic. Phil Murphy's policies as it relates to what's gone on in our nursing homes, what's gone on Main Street with mom and pop shops. So those are two of the key issues, his handling of the pandemic. And we're seeing it right now, too, with the administration's handling of the rollout of the vaccination.
Jack, are those some of the reasons why you decided to run?
They're really not. I mean, I tried to get Kim Guadagno elected 4 years ago. When Phil Murphy beat her, I went back out on the campaign trail in all of 2018-19 as an unofficial candidate. I declared in January of 2020. So I've been on the campaign trail now close to 3 years. And pre-pandemic, the issues were all about the crises that ravage the middle class in this state and prevent people from getting ahead, prevent people from achieving their American dream. And those crises are our property tax crisis, our business climate crisis, both of which are the worst in the nation, and also our public pension crisis, which is the second worst in the nation. Those three issues paralyze the state economically, they constrain us fiscally, and deny people the opportunity to achieve the American dream here. But now that the pandemic's come along, we've got a lot more to talk about in terms of the way the governor, again, has handled nursing homes, Main Street, and schools. I really do believe our kids need to be back in school.
Yeah. And why do you think that you can do a better job than Phil Murphy on all of those issues?
A couple of reasons. One, I'm an MBA CPA. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an investment banker. I'm born and raised here. I'm a two-time successful business owner. And also, I've had the privilege of serving at every level of government here in New Jersey. I've always term limited myself, but I did serve 2 terms at municipal level, 2 terms at the county level, and 3 two-year terms in the state legislature. And that means I understand New Jersey. I understand it from a business owner's perspective. I understand it as a lifelong resident, and I understand as someone who served at every level of government. Phil Murphy can't say any of that.
That is very interesting. And Jack, you said, or as part of your campaign, you've been doing a small business tour. What have you learned by stopping at and shopping at some of the small businesses around the Garden State?
They were in Hackensack, Bergen County, supporting mom and pop shops. Family.
Go ahead, Jack.
Well, there I am. I think that was the day that I was in Bergen at a famous bakery, and I got my crullers and crumb buns, and they were delicious. But listen, I just want to show them that I care. I know what they're going through. 3 out of 10 New Jersey businesses have already shut their doors forever. Mom and pop shops that have been in families for generations are on the brink of closing their doors. And I'm all about saving lives. But what you never hear from this governor is that we should also be about saving livelihoods. I believe we can do both. This is a very contagious and deadly virus, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't be trying to save livelihoods in addition to saving lives. I believe we can.
So, with a lot of Republican voters, the way that the last election went down was a little bit suspect. Even to this day, there's a lot of questions around the results. If your election is mail-in, like we saw in November, how does that impact the race?
Well, I don't see it impacting the race in the sense that we just have to make sure there aren't any voting irregularities, or we just need to continue to point out all the things that made the VBM election, a vote by mail election, wrong. It was unnecessarily messy. It was unnecessarily expensive. And there's a great deal of probability of human error. We saw ballots down in Atlantic County were mailed out that were missing candidates' names. We've heard countless stories of people that received 2 ballots, or people who received a ballot at a home that they hadn't lived at in 15 years. Our own daughter here in our house received a ballot. She hasn't lived here in 4 years. We see the story in Mercer County of a man who delivered the ballot of a man who had died 5 days earlier. And the really sad part of that story is the guy that delivered the ballot, his wife works on the Board of Elections. So the challenge with an all VBM election is there's a lot of potential for irregularity and fraud. We have to point all those things out and make sure it doesn't happen again. But listen, I'm advocating for us voting in person. It's a lot less messy. It's a lot less expensive. We virtually eliminate the chances of fraud. And listen, if we can stand in line for 5 hours at motor vehicles, we can certainly vote in person.
Agreed.
Jack, thank you so much for joining us today. We so appreciate it. Once again, Jack Ciattarelli running for governor of New Jersey this year. Thank you again for your time.
Guys, great to be with you. Looking forward to next time.
Thank you, Jack.
Bye-bye.
So joining us now is going to be longtime New Jersey political reporter, State House reporter, Laura Jones. Laura, hi, how are you doing?
Oh, really well. So nice to see you both.
It's nice to see you. I haven't seen you in quite some time, actually.
I know. New Jersey's like a soap opera, though. You kind of are around and then you get caught back up in no time. It's great.
Yes, it is. Absolutely.
I love that analogy.
Laura, so you know what? You've been covering elections and governors for a while now. How is the race for governor of New Jersey shaping up this year? You see anything different for 2021?
Yeah, I think the big elephant in the room, how we don't know it's the factor is the COVID and pandemic. How is that going to play in the election? Because, a week, 2 weeks can feel like a lifetime, especially in politics. And what we saw changing so much last year, how is that going to play? How are people going to be reacting to the vaccine? Is it going to really protect our people so we can get back to business as usual? Once we get a better feel on that, I think we'll know a little bit more about how the election is going to play out. But it's definitely kind of the wild card. We just don't know how that is going to impact this year's election. But New Jersey's always, we joke sometimes that it should be nicknamed the election state because there's always an election going on. And the entire legislature, not just the governor, the entire legislature is up as well. So it's going to be a very, very busy year politically in New Jersey.
We love that. So talk to us about the buzz that Governor Murphy could go to Washington, D.C.
Okay. Governor Murphy had been an ambassador under the Obama administration, but he has said time and again, nope, I like my job. I'm not going anywhere. And he said that as recently as just a couple of days ago following the inauguration. He went down to Washington, D.C. for the inauguration. He said, I like my job. I want to keep it. That said, when Christy Whitman was asked to serve as EPA administrator for George Bush at the time, and she left the office of the governor, she said, it's really hard to say no when the president asks. So if President Biden asks him, it might be hard to say no. That said, he's on the record as saying, no, I'm not going to go to Washington, D.C. So we'll see how that goes.
Very interesting stuff, Laura. So let's talk a little bit about the state of politics in New Jersey. Since Democrats now control Washington, how does that impact our state?
Right. So the senators have a working relationship with President Joe Biden, because he was a U.S. senator, and they've got that relationship. And as much as things change, sometimes they stay the same. New Jersey always has had an issue getting back their fair share from Washington, D.C. So you put the pandemic, everything else aside, how effective can our congressional representatives be at getting what New Jersey needs, right? That's their job. They represent us in Washington. So are they going to be listening? I know Senator Bob Menendez has said he's been very pleased in what he's heard so far from Joe Biden as it relates to immigration reform. So there is that relationship, and there'll be back and forth. And even though the House and Senate and executive branch is Democratic control, it's not by a huge majority, so they have to work together. Ultimately, everybody has to work together, whether they agree, disagree. They have to come together. So I think it should be positive and productive, and there will be a little bit of a sense of familiarity, I would imagine, with that relationship with Senator, now President Joe Biden.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the previous president, President Donald Trump. Right before leaving office, he pardons a lot of people. And of course, we have several here right from the Garden State, one of whom, Solomon Melgen from Florida. You covered that trial extensively. Talk to us about your thoughts on the pardons, especially on the Garden State side.
Right. I was taking a look and seeing who are the possible pardons. And when I saw Dr. Solomon Malgen, I kind of paused because I'm thinking, well, there's no way, because that is someone who has a relationship and a friendship with Senator Bob Menendez. The two of them were on trial, and Senator Menendez, it was a deadlocked jury on if there was any abuse of power. And when I saw that he received the pardon, and thinking, well, there is a relationship with Bob Menendez, and then I went and I looked to see who had sponsored it, who had asked, and Senator Menendez had, put in that request, but I don't know how many other people he had asked, about a pardon. And when I read Senator Menendez's reaction, he said, I'm honestly quite surprised. I don't understand. I wasn't really expecting it. I don't know what to I did not know what to expect of the president. And that's about all Senator Menendez said. It sounded like on the surface, he was surprised. There was another individual, George Gilmore, a Republican powerhouse behind the scenes, especially when it comes to Republican operatives. And when I looked and I saw he had received a pardon as well, I'm thinking, well, Republican, but I looked to see who had requested or who had signed on, and both past Democrat and Republican governors both had signed on to that. So there's always a little bit of a story behind the story. But when it comes to the optometrist who Bob Menendez had gone on to trial with together, that was a little bit baffling. And I think, like I said, Menendez seemed to be surprised himself.
Yeah. And there was also Kenneth Kurson from Maplewood as well.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So many names on the list. And because more people are paying attention, I think, than ever before, because we're home, we're looking at this, I think things get a little bit more than they have in the past, right? So you have to look back and get that perspective, right? Has this happened before? What were the circumstances? And everything has just been a little off this year. So anything that you try to predict and try and put your head around is a little bit more complicated, because there isn't a precedent in our lifetime of what has happened. We've not seen, how our pardon's going to work out in a pandemic and a Republican administration when Democrats are asking. So it's very interesting to watch, and it's hard to even predict what's going to happen in New Jersey, because when something huge happens and you think, oh my gosh, this is the biggest thing to hit New Jersey, this is unprecedented, then all of a sudden, bam, another headline comes at you and you're thinking, wow. So never a dull moment, and not always a rhyme or reason, but it's interesting to watch.
It is. And we hope to have you back on soon, Laura, as this governor race heats up and all the other political stories in our state. We want to get your take on how that's impacting us. So thank you so much for the insight here this morning.
Oh, so good to see you both. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Laura. Bye.
All right, so up next, how New Jersey contributed to the inauguration. Plus, we talk about news coverage in the times of Trump and Biden. But first, let's take a look at New Jersey weather this morning.
Connecticut.
Oh boy, they weren't kidding. Whew.
You're looking for a gold crown?
Sure. So you say you're helping people through. How are you doing that?
All right, crew, let's get started. Sure.
Don't ignore the law. You must call 811 at least 2 to 3 days before any digging project so you can avoid hitting our essential buried utilities. For digging projects big or small, make the call to 811.
Welcome back, everybody, to the New Jersey Morning Show. Well, once again, President Biden was inaugurated on Wednesday. Whenever there's a big event, you can always expect a New Jersey tie. The inauguration of President Biden and Vice President Harris is no exception. Artist Tracy Chingham, who is originally from Monmouth County, created the official inauguration poster. The poster was commissioned by the 2021 Presidential Inaugural Committee.
That is gorgeous. You know, there was a viral tweet that I saw because not only with the artist, but we had Bruce Springsteen and Bon Jovi and Jon Stewart as part of the nightly inauguration celebration. And the tweet called for the other states to up their game. You know, we're a tiny part of and we have all this talent. It's so amazing.
Yeah, you know what? New Jerseyans have always been, I feel like because the state is so diverse, tiny as it is, we got the mountains, we got the beach, we have cities, we have the suburbs, we've got farmland, it just breeds creativity here.
Yes, yes. Well, so speaking of the inauguration, it was a very busy week when we had the inauguration and President Biden's first days where he signed a bunch of executive orders, putting the U.S. back in the Paris Climate Accord and pausing the Keystone Pipeline and the border wall. There's no doubt the news media is a big part of everything that happens in Washington and in Trenton. Joining us now to talk about the news media today is former New York City TV reporter Frank Sapola. He's also the CEO of media coaching and guest placement company Contacts Media and the author of the book, It Shocked Even Us. Frank joins us live here. Frank, how are you?
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be with both of you. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for joining us here this morning. So let's get right to it. How is social media changing journalism? We all know President Trump loved Twitter, and it was a huge tool he used to communicate directly to the people, and which got taken away from him a couple weeks back. But plus, there's so much info flying around social media, and it has to be difficult for reporters to decipher fact from fiction.
Well, it's actually changed in a few ways. It's changed the entire landscape, Kara and Lisa, and I'll tell you how. First of all, people are getting news on their phones as opposed to waiting for the 6 o'clock news or watching CNN or MSNBC and so on and so forth. So the news, which was almost immediate, is now even more immediate. Unfortunately, there's no gatekeeper on things like Facebook and Parler and so on and so forth. So you have to really go through the information to find out if it's accurate or not. I don't mind social media. I think it works very well. I love that people have cameras in their phones and they're taking video of car accidents and other events. All of that is wonderful. What I have an issue with, however, is there's no editor at the end to say, is this accurate? Did 2 people pass away in that car accident? Or was it 3? How do we know? We don't know. It's just information coming, for lack of a better description, with a fire hose as opposed to a regular hose where there's time to actually control what's going on. So I enjoy that part of it. I think that's good. With social media as well, a lot of my reporter friends are now telling me that everything is being pushed into the web. And that's the next generation. That's the evolution of news. I had a reporter whom I was speaking with in West Palm Beach, Florida the other day. And she said, Frank, my news director says, let's do the web story first before you even work on the broadcast story. So that's how immediate and important and how the web is really taking hold in social media.
Wow. That's really interesting. Frank, I, like you, also have, a background from, traditional journalism. I still have friends, family, and colleagues in the industry. Mm-hmm. Do you think, I've always kind of felt this way, particularly over the last 4 years, that the general population has a really poor understanding of how news is brought to them? And I think, you talked about how everybody has a camera in their phone. It seems that a lot of people are under the impression that journalists just go out and do the same thing, take a picture with their phone and post it up without doing that research that you talked about. Can you kind of talk just maybe briefly about how news, real journalistic news, comes to people?
Well, I don't want to sound like the old guy. But first of all, let me say that this is a very noble profession. I tell every young reporter, this is a calling that you should really give your heart and soul to, as I did for so many years. And it is a great, noble profession. So to answer your question, it's changed in ways good and bad. I think there was a time when I was a cub reporter back in the 80s where you had to pay your dues. You had to go to journalism school. You had to learn how to construct a story, what was important, to check your facts, and so on and so forth. For lack of a better description, you were allowed into the castle of a major market like New York or Philadelphia after you had paid your dues in smaller markets and really learned that trade, a skill. Nowadays, you find a lot of younger reporters who could use that seasoning before they're brought into the major markets. And a lot of them, unfortunately, and I talk with them all day long with regard to my company, Context Media, which is a guest placement company and a media coaching company. And I see a lot of great journalists who've gone to all the great schools, Syracuse, Northwestern University. They've learned their trade and they're actually burnt out because everybody is a citizen journalist now. And the cachet that we used to have of being a journalist has sort of gone away. But the really good ones, you watch them on a regular basis, they're doing their job well. Those are the ones you should aspire to. And that's what I tell them.
Yeah. Well, in politics, just circling back to present times.
Before you go on, it's almost like a News 12 reunion because my dear friend Laura Jones was on a moment ago, and I absolutely love her. I worked with her briefly at News 12, as I did with your producer.
It is a News 12 reunion, yes. Except me, I'm like the outlier, but that's okay.
You are the outcast.
Italian today, which is so funny. Anyway, so let's talk about the politics. Do you see President Biden having the Twitter impact that Trump had, or are we going to see now more back to basics?
Well, let me use an analogy, if I may. For most of modern history, since the television days of the 1950s and so on. And again, I'm sounding like the old guy, but I'm a historian of television. Since the beginning of that era, we have been watching documentaries. I'm using an analogy. We've been watching a documentary called The U.S. Presidency. And about 4 or 5 years ago, we decided, let's change the channel and watch a reality show. And we saw what happened. We saw the information, the misinformation, and so on and so forth. I think with the election of President Biden and his inauguration just a few days ago, what we're seeing is a return to normalcy. We're seeing regular press conferences. We're seeing information based in science and so on. I think we had as a collective people here in the United States of America, we've had our little run with the reality show, and we realized that we didn't like it so much. And now we're back to watching documentaries.
I like that analogy very much, actually, Frank. Yeah, so for sure. So do you think, right now, we have a new president, we have President Biden, and a lot of politics is, the right message at the right time. If you were in charge of running communications for President Biden, what would you advise him to do?
Well, as a journalist, I'm going to tell you that I won't tell you my political bent, but I will tell you this. I think Joe Biden is off to a very good start in that he's reconstructing the presidency that, for all intents and purposes, was flipped upside down during the Trump administration. He has the regular press conferences. The information is coming out. He's regularly appearing before the cameras. He's answering the questions. And he said many, many times before, I'm going to give you the good and the bad. If I was controlling his media, I would do exactly what they're doing now. People need to be less stressed from, again, to use that analogy, that reality show that we saw in the last 4 years, and they need to get the information based in science and fact and so on. And I think over time, and I'm one of the few people that will say this, I think over time, people who are going to be helped by the policies of Joe Biden will sort of level out. And this Trumpism, this violence we saw a couple of weeks in Washington, this QAnon stuff and so on and so forth will just fade away. I truly believe that. People say that Trumpism is here to stay, that there's an angry populace. I don't see that. I see eventually, like the Tea Party, and the Tea Party was all the rage 8-9 years ago, it will eventually fade away and we'll get back to what I mentioned a moment ago, some degree of normalcy.
Okay. Well, let's shift gears here and talk about your book, which I love the title. It Shocked Even Us.
It Shocked Even Us and More Crazy Stories Covering Local News is the full name. And, I started this about 10 years ago. Every morning I get out and I bang out about 3.5 pages. In essence, it's a look behind the scenes at all the stories I covered, a funny look behind the scenes, all the stories I've covered in and around New York City, part memoir as well. It's not deep in perspective. It's not political in any way. It just tells you what happens behind the scenes and my journey, quite frankly. I've been telling these funny stories to folks for years, and I finally put it down on paper. So, I'm happy to have it. It's just an easy, breezy, funny read with small, digestible stories. And if you're a newsnik like I am, you're absolutely going to love it. If you've grown up in the New York metropolitan area and you've watched news your whole life, you're absolutely going to love it.
Frank, that sounds like it's got to be so much fun, especially as a seasoned journalist. I can't imagine the stories that you have to tell.
There are funny ones out there, and it goes from everything to the Exxon Valdez story, the press conference, to the guy in Harlem who had a tiger in his apartment, a full-grown tiger in his apartment.
In a Harlem apartment.
Taken out, and, all sorts of stories. The time I met Donald Trump in the elevator at Giant Stadium, all in there, all funny. I enjoyed writing it. It was another job, Kara and Lisa. I'm not going to lie to you. I told my bride not too long ago, I said, if I start writing a book again, stop me, because it was another job. But I organized the stories. I put them together. I'm very proud of it. And the sales have been going very well. And by the way, I'll have to plug the book because we all are salespeople. You can get it at itshockedevenus.com. It shocked, as in shocking, evenus.com. And I'll inscribe it for you as well.
That's great. Thank you, Frank. I definitely want to pick that up because even just those little teasers that you gave, I need to know the backstory behind that.
It's a crazy business, man. It's a crazy business.
Yes, it is. Well, thank you so much for joining us here this morning, and we hope to see you soon.
It's a pleasure. Thank you again. You can always have me on again, and have a great day, and glad to be on your show today.
Thank you so much, Frank. All right, Lisa, up next, how a movie from the 80s turned a court case upside down. Plus, we're talking Jets football with NJ.com's New York Jets reporter. But first, a look at New Jersey's weather.
Swing the hip. Oh boy, they weren't kidding. Whew.
You're looking for a gold crown?
Sure. So you say you're helping people through. How are you doing that?
All right, crew, let's get started. Sure.
Don't ignore the law. You must call 811 at least 2 to 3 days before any digging project so you can avoid hitting our essential buried utilities. For digging projects big or small, make the call to 811.
Welcome back, everyone, to the New Jersey Morning Show. I'm Kara DeFalco.
And I'm Lisa Marie Falvo.
So, Lisa Marie, check this out. What are the chances that a Jack Nicholson movie from the 80s could get a court case overturned? We're going to file this one under only here in New Jersey. The New Jersey Supreme Court overturned a bank robbery conviction. Here's why. The court says the prosecutor referenced the classic horror movie, The Shining. The defendant in the case was named Damon Williams. During closing arguments, the prosecutor showed jurors a photo from the movie with the character played by Jack Nicholson. It's a picture of the famous scene where Nicholson says, "Here's Johnny," after breaking through a door with an axe. The prosecutor was trying to be clever, but it backfired. The Supreme Court says prosecutors must, quote, walk a fine line, unquote, when comparing a defendant with, quote, an individual whom the jury associates with violence or guilt. I kind of see it. You can't.
Yeah, that prosecutor walked out of there with a lot of egg on his face, huh?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I get it. I get, the reference in a social setting, perhaps, but yeah, you can't tell a jury, hey, they're equal.
Yeah, definitely not in a courtroom. Well, Kara, I have some good news.
Ooh.
Gas prices are going up again.
Oh, lovely.
According to AAA Mid-Atlantic, the average price of a gallon of regular in New Jersey is around $2.52. Drivers are paying an average of $2.63 a gallon a year ago at this time. Analysts say prices are increasing because of low demand since so many people are working from home. Yes, prices are expected to keep rising, unfortunately. Just what we need, more big bills.
Yeah, you know what though, but I don't know if you do this anymore. I feel like particularly our generation, like when we had that initial like gas price jump when it went like over $3, for a gallon of regular. Beyond that point, I stopped looking. The car needs gas. What do you want me to do? I don't look at the prices anymore. Whatever it is, it is.
I know. There's some people that still shop. I mean, my grandfather, bless his heart, 92 years old, he will go to the gas station that is a penny less. People still do bargain shopping when it comes to their gas.
I know they do. But like I said, for me, I'm on, but you know what? I feel like I do it in other ways where, my car is small. It's very fuel efficient. It actually is a manual transmission, which is even more fuel efficient. So I'm like, whatever. The car needs gas. I'm going to fill it up.
Yeah. The car's hungry. When we're hungry, we eat, right?
We eat. Exactly. Got to do what you got to do. Whatever you're charging me for it, I'm not going to argue with you.
No. Well, speaking of food, by the way, you have some big news. You just interviewed Chef Lydia Bastianich on your YouTube show, Kara's Cucina. Congratulations. I know that must have been such a thrill for you.
Thank you so much. And really, personally, thank you, because you were the one who sent me the press release that she was doing a media tour to promote her new special on PBS, which is actually, they just moved it after we did the interview to February. But you can look for your local PBS listings. But yeah, for me personally, I was amazed the words came out of my mouth. I not too often am I starstruck, but she is just someone, I grew up watching Lydia. She even says she's been on air for 20 years. She's always somebody that, my parents would put on, whose recipes we've followed, whose books we've had. So to have her be a guest on my show was just a dream come true. And she is so lovely and so gracious and so professional. It is like talking to your own nonna. I mean, she's incredible.
Now, did you guys make anything together?
We were not able to right now because we had to do things via Zoom. So we did an interview and then she sent me a recipe and I did the recipe by myself in the kitchen, in the cucina, step by step following her recipe. So you can still find Lydia's recipe on the website, karadefalco.com, and you can watch the video of it and then the interview comes first.
That is so, so awesome. Well, congratulations. I'm so happy when things work out like that. And I know that was big, big thrill.
It was. It really was.
So Jet fans in the New York, New Jersey area got a big thrill with the introduction of their new head coach, Robert Saleh, the first Muslim American head coach for the National Football League. And joining us here to talk all about the state of the New York Jets is NJ.com New York Jets reporter Daryl Slater. Daryl, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. So I know this press conference wasn't as memorable as the one they had 2 years ago with Adam Gase. I still laugh at that, by the way. I think Jet fans are happy that it was just a normal press conference. Talk to us. What did you take away from Robert's words, Christopher Johnson's words?
Yeah, the Jets wanted to find a CEO type head coach, a guy who could be a big picture leader. And Adam Gase really wasn't that. I mean, he concentrated almost exclusively on offense, and that was really to the detriment of the team. He wasn't a clear leader or communicator. And that was what the Jets sought out to find in this coaching search, was a clear communicator, a guy who could command the respect of all the players in the team. And Robert Saleh has a really remarkable journey coming up from Dearborn in the Muslim community there and worked his way up. And really has developed a tremendous relationship and reputation in the NFL and relationship with players for becoming, a CEO type coach, a guy who's so, for instance, he won't be calling the defensive plays. That's one example, right? He's a defensive coordinator coming from the 49ers, but he said he wants to look at the whole big picture, and the Jets really need that. So I think that was among the big takeaways from yesterday's press conference.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the trend, right? I mean, I know when football coaches, when they tend to focus on one side of the football, the other side seem to get away. We saw that with the New York Giants, with some of their previous head coaches as well. So I think Jet fans will be very appreciative of that approach. What do you think is in the cards for Sam Darnold here?
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways the Jets can go with this, because they didn't lose enough games to have the number 1 pick. They really screwed up by winning last year, which is very, very typical Jets. They have the number 2 pick, and the number 1 pick, of course, will be Trevor Lawrence, the quarterback from Clemson. Everyone thinks he's going to be a great player, but what will the Jets do at number 2? They could take a quarterback from Ohio State named Justin Fields. They could take BYU's Zach Wilson. They could hold on to Sam Darnold. They could try to trade for Deshaun Watson, who is not happy with the Texans. So there's a lot of different ways the Jets general manager, Joe Douglas, can take this thing now that he doesn't have the number 1 pick because Adam Gase screwed up by winning too much. So so that's where the Jets are. There's a lot of uncertainty here. So Sam Darnold absolutely could be back with the Jets in 2021.
Yeah, but, say he does come back. Now, this is his 3rd head coach, his 3rd system. I mean, can he even flourish at this point?
Yeah, that's the big question. Is he salvageable? And I think that the Jets coaching staff, namely Mike LaFleur, who is the offensive coordinator, will have to look at this. His brother, Matt LaFleur, is the Packers head coach and has done a great job there. Of course, it helps having Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback. It helps make you look good. So what the Jets are going to do is they're going to be running like a West Coast offense, similar to actually what Sam Darnold ran as a rookie. So there is a little bit of familiarity there. He showed some glimmers of hope at the end of his rookie year, and Robert Saleh and Mike LaFleur look at that and say, maybe we can find something here. Then again, maybe the Jets make a great offer for Deshaun Watson. They have enough draft picks to do it. Maybe they get Deshaun Watson and trade Sam Darnold away. But I think from a cynical perspective and looking at it from the outside, it is that point, right? We've seen this guy for 3 years and he hasn't been able to put it together. What makes anyone think he can do it now? So if they can salvage him somehow, that would be the best course of action, because they wouldn't have to trade for anyone. They wouldn't have to use a high draft pick on a quarterback. But you have to really be kind of skeptical about whether they can do that, considering how sluggish he's kind of looked for most of his first 3 seasons.
Yeah. Well, now the other piece of news coming in Jets world is that Woody Johnson is back from London. How is that going to impact Joe Douglas and the entire staff?
Yeah, that's a great point. I wrote about that this morning on NJ.com. Mm-hmm. Woody Johnson was actually on his plane back from the UK yesterday during Robert Saleh's introductory press conference. So Robert Saleh has actually never spoken to Woody Johnson, who is now his new boss, which will create an interesting dynamic. I think if you look at this, obviously Woody Johnson did not hire, Joe Douglas did not hire Robert Saleh. Christopher Johnson, his younger brother and the acting owner, did. But I don't think this means anything tough for them, Robert Saleh or Joe Douglas, right now. I think if you look at this, Joe Douglas will get at least the next 2 years to try to fix the Jets. He's under contract through 2024. Robert Saleh is under contract through 2025. So the soonest I think that Woody Johnson could move on from Joe Douglas would be after the 2022 season. These next 2 off seasons will be huge for Joe Douglas in the draft and free agency to try to fix this thing. And but yeah, I mean, it's a little awkward having a boss coming back from across the ocean who you've never even talked to, in the case of Robert Saleh. But he said he's not worried about it, which is what you'd expect him to say. It'll be interesting to see how the dynamic works, because Christopher Johnson will still be heavily involved in Florham Park at Jets headquarters, more so than he was before Woody Johnson took that ambassador job. So they'll be working together. But as Christopher said yesterday on the Zoom call for Robert Saleh's press conference, Woody has the final say once again.
Yeah, and Robert Saleh, look, he was, in my opinion, the most sought after assistant coach, right, in this head coaching search. So I don't think there's going to be any problems. I think with both NFL teams in the area, the Jets and the Giants, the future is bright with these young head coaches.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot of reason to have hope for both Joe Judge and Robert Saleh. And then you mentioned it earlier. Joe Judge is also a CEO type head coach. He came from the Patriots, where he was special teams coordinator. So he doesn't call offensive or defensive plays either. He can see the big picture of the game. I think there's a lot of hope that fans should have in these coaches. I think where fans need to look at this and say, hey, we need to see more, is the talent acquisition by the general managers. Dave Gettleman with the Giants, Joe Douglas with the Jets. Joe Douglas, like I said, will have these next 2 off seasons, because he's really only had one full off season. He'll have these next 2 off seasons to build it up. I think as Giants fans look at Dave Gettleman, they can kind of go both ways. He didn't have a lot of success outside of Saquon Barkley drafting him until last off season. He made some nice moves. So you have to have players to win in the NFL, no matter how good your coach is. So the Jets and the Giants, the fans should feel like, hey, we have this piece here, a good young leader as our head coach. Let's see if the general manager can actually deliver some players for this guy, because that's a huge part of the recipe.
Absolutely. Well, before we let you go, it is championship weekend in the NFL. Who are your picks to go to the Super Bowl?
I would love to see the Bills continue this magical run. I think they'll play a close, high-scoring game against the Chiefs, but I think the Chiefs win by, say, 3 points there. In the Packers-Bucks game, that's one to watch. I mean, Todd Bowles, Elizabeth, New Jersey native, defensive coordinator for the Bucks and former Jets head coach, has his hands full at Lambeau Field with Aaron Rodgers. But I think in that case, another one that would be a fantastic story either way, because Aaron Rodgers has only played in one Super Bowl. I think the Packers win that one probably by 10 to 14 points. The Bucks just won't be able to keep up. But folks in New Jersey certainly will be watching and rooting for Todd Bowles, who's from Elizabeth.
Do you think Jet fans, though, would be happy to see Todd Bowles and the Bills in a Super Bowl?
Well, I think that they would not be happy to see the Bills in the Super Bowl, because that would sort of further underscore the fact that the Jets made a mistake by not taking Josh Allen in the 2018 draft. For Todd Bowles, he is a guy who had a great deal of dignity during his time with the Jets. He didn't embarrass himself. He didn't embarrass the franchise. He just couldn't win enough. I think on a human level, people would be happy for him. The Bucs aren't a team that the Jets compete with, in terms of a rivalry like the Bills are. So I think Jets fans, at least a segment of them, would be happy for Todd Bowles to see him get into the Super Bowl for the first time as a head coach. The Bills, not so much, just because of the rivalry there in the AFC.
I can't imagine that. But Daryl, this was so much fun. Thank you so much. We hope to have you back on soon as more Hot Stove football news heats up.
Sure thing. Anytime.
Thanks, Daryl.
All right, guys. So, Lisa, I have to admit, I have not watched football all season. I have no idea what's going on. Like, I am a Giants fan, but I just, quarantine just put me in a weird time warp. But I'm like, what day is it? Is there football? What is happening? So, I'm so...
On football Sundays in this house, it starts at 11 o'clock with the pregame shows, and it goes until midnight at the end of the NBC Sunday Night Football games. So I got your back, girl. Don't worry.
I know you do. That's why I was like, Lisa's got this. I'm going to you know what I got? I got food, and that is what it comes down to. And the COVID lockdown has been so hard on small businesses, particularly restaurants. So Lisa Marie, we want to start doing a little something new and fun here on the New Jersey Morning Show. We want to highlight a local business, and I want to shout out my friend Jerry Archieri at Aquila Pizza al Forno in Little Falls, New Jersey. This guy is the real deal. He is making true Neapolitan style pizzas, with an Italian American flair. And, this is a small shop. Anybody who's ever been there, I mean, there's maybe 8 to 10 tables in there. So, when everything shut down, he really had to take something that's not intended to be takeout and convert it. And he's just been having a great support and says he's doing well with it. And I'm really happy for them. But I encourage anybody in the area to please go check out Aquila and Jerry. He does a great job. I think this week's special is something with capicola ham and some nice Kalamata olives and a couple of other things. He comes up with some great combinations for these pizzas.
Well, you have me sold with that. Let's go.
Yeah, really delicious stuff. So again, that's our business shout out for this week. And since we're talking food, I'm really excited to bring on our next guest today. Author Andrew Cotto is an award-winning novelist and a regular contributor to the New York Times. His new book, Black Irish Blues, is about a runaway who returns to his hometown with plans to buy the town's only tavern and end his family's Sicilian curse. The Sicilian curses are particularly difficult to get over. Andrew joins us live, and he's going to cook for us because food is such an important part of all of his stories. And Andrew and I have worked together on a couple of projects as well. He's also been a guest on Cara's Cucina. Hello, my friend.
Hi, Cara. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Okay?
Yeah,
I got to say first.
Good.
Thank you. Lisa Marie was carrying you during that jet segment. My goodness.
No.
I told her.
Cara's going to carry me through this since you guys are friends. So I'll just let you guys
work well together. We know each other's strengths and weaknesses, and we can step in where need be.
Well, I'm guessing Lisa, you know food more than Cara knows football.
Well, I don't know, no, but Cara's my go-to when it comes to food. I mean, I like to eat it, but she like.
Let's go to it.
Yeah. So
nice
tell us, Andrew, tell us about Black Irish Blues.
Sure. It is a sequel to a previous novel. That's what sequels are, obviously. It takes place in northern New Jersey, in a sort of a fictionalized version of my hometown of Glen Rock, though I had to fictionalize it to avoid getting in trouble with anybody. But the character grows up in this town, just like I did. In the previous book, which is this one here, Attleboro Blues, it tells the story of this character, Caesar Stiles, and his family, who's have a tragic history. The father is a Irish orphan from the Bronx. The mother is a Sicilian, first generation, haunted by a family curse because apparently her mother came to America not to assimilate and immigrate, but to kill somebody. And according to the mother, this put a curse on their family. And if you look at the story of this family's existence in northern New Jersey, where our character's growing up, she might be onto something. Things go really bad for this family. So Caesar ends up running away at the age of 15. He travels around America for 10 years, all detailed in the previous novel, Attleboro Blues, and he returns home. At his mother's request, as she is on her deathbed, and she wants to tell him about the family curse and beg him to break it, which her remedy is to have him stick around, to not be transient, to make a home and to start a family and do what immigrants are supposed to do in America. And he tries. He moves to Brooklyn. He settles in a neighborhood, and he finds himself as sort of a detective of sorts by chance, though he's a chef by trade. And once he solves this mystery in Brooklyn, he realizes that he really needs to be closer to home in order to end this curse. So he moves back to his hometown, crossing the George Washington Bridge, as seen in the cover there, buys the only inn that the town has, refurbishes it, and tries to set up what he believes to be a normal life. And it doesn't work out that way because there's all these ghosts from his past lurking around. There's a new mystery involving a missing person. So it all sort of intertwines into this really sort of fun, noirish mystery with lots of food.
Where did the inspiration for this story come from?
Well, that's a great question. These stories in particular are really figments of my imagination in large part, but the origin for this series is truly that not my grandmother, my mother's grandmother did come to America for revenge. She left Sicily to find the man who had left her sister at the altar. And when I heard that story, and I was in my teens that came to me, I thought, wow, this is so fantastic. And this has got to be, something to sort of jumpstart a narrative. And not even knowing I'd be a writer someday, I just had it in my head. And when I started getting into noir as a really fun sort of genre to write in, this came right to me, and I'm all over it.
Wow.
Andrew, what
Sicilian man? I had a Sicilian grandmother, and she was tough.
They are. I remember my mother's grandmother when I was a kid sitting in the corner of the kitchen of my grandmother's house just with this knife she had, the knife that she apparently came to kill somebody with, just peeling raw garlic and eating it off the knife blade. Raw garlic, looking at us kids like, I hate you, right? You know, like doing all this kind of stuff. She didn't speak. She just made gestures at us. It was like,
Yes.
fine.
Hey, like they said in The Godfather, in Sicily, women are more dangerous than the guns, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Andrew, so what I can't, that, you know what, I don't actually have Sicilian ties, but I sometimes I know a lot of Sicilians, and yeah, it's a rough bunch. They're a tough bunch. Andrew, what role does food play in this story? Because food is so much a part of all of your books.
Yeah, I mean that's why we're friends, right? We run in food circles together, and I didn't intend to be a food writer. When I was, I love food and I love literature, and I never thought they would intersect. But as I started writing novels, I started feeding all my characters. I just felt like they should be what they chose to eat, and if they chose to prepare food for other people, said something about them. It was a matter of character development. So even in my first book, which isn't like food centric book, the character is Italian American from Queens. It's a coming of age story called The Domino Effect. But a big part of his reconciliation with his estranged father is them remembering the things they used to do together involving food when he was growing up. They go shopping for the Feast of Seven Fishes. They take sandwiches from a latticino of roasted pork with mozzarella and gravy on it. And he starts to remember, eating with my father was one of the things we enjoyed together and why we were so close. So I sort of built upon that food-based narrative, and with each subsequent book, in Attleboro Blues, I decided to make the protagonist a chef, not a detective, to make it different, but also he's sort of a reticent soul, and so it's hard to get him to emote on the page, so I have him cook for people, and his cooking for people is how he communicates, how he shows who he is, and that he actually is a caring, loving person, even though he's quite quiet and reserved and even a little bit dangerous. Not knife eating garlic dangerous, but dangerous. And then I went bonkers on the food. My agent at the time said, you got to write something that has more food in it. So I wrote a book set in Italy. This is how we met, Kara, right? Cucina Tipica. Yes. I have her. I should have this even more handy. This book here is set in Italy, and it is food fiction. I mean, the character goes to Italy on holiday and is like, you know what, I'm not going home. And that happened to me, actually. I came home and I returned for a year. This character's like, I'm never leaving Italy. And the reason I'm never leaving Italy is because the food is so good, right? Every day he eats really well, drinks really good wine, and it's all right there, affordable and accessible. It's not a privilege, it's a right? I mean, there's 26 meals in this book, and he's chasing ancestry, but he's chasing ancestry between meals, right? The priority is the meals, right? So I discovered this sort of knack for, creating atmosphere through food, and I create characterization through food, and I create sensory pleasure through food in these novels. And I've taken that to my journalism too. I write for The Times and La Cucina Italiana, Rachel Ray's magazine, and I'm always covering food. It's just like, I think it's the most important thing we can do together as friends, as people, as community and family, is to eat together. I would rather eat. I wish we were eating right now.
Me too.
Well, I was gonna say, aren't you cooking a little something for us? Speaking of cooking and eating together, what do you got going on over there?
I've got a pot boiling behind me. It's just creeping up my back with the steam, by the way. So this is like dangerous. It's funny when your producer said yesterday, well, you should demo something too. I said, demo something at 9:30 in the morning. I did this series, a reading series during the lockdown. I call it the Aperitivo Hour. It's on my YouTube page, where I'd read food passages from my book, right, and then make something that I'd read. And I did this for the release of Black Irish Blues for the book party, right? I read a passage where he fries lamb chops. So after I read the passage and had some music played, I made fried lamb chops right here in my kitchen. I didn't think I could make you guys fried lamb chops at 9:30 in the morning, so I started thinking creatively. And what I thought of was something that's actually in the book, very Jersey-centric too, in a way, which is a classic carbonara, right? Carbonara is a great pasta, but out of Rome, but it actually is so familiar to what we eat, especially in Jersey, which is bacon, egg, and cheese. That's what
bacon, egg, and cheese on a hard roll, baby.
Yeah, bacon, egg, and cheese, but on a roll. Right? And in the story, Caesar has Taylor ham, egg, and cheese, even make it more Jersey-centric, right? There's a great scene, and I won't belabor this, but this sort of what I was talking about. There's a scene in the story where Caesar's refurbishing the bar, right? His friend says, you need any help? He says, yeah, I do need help. He said, I'll bring some guys by tomorrow. When on my way to work in the morning, I pass, a corner where there's people waiting to do day labor, right? The next day, there's these two cousins from Ecuador waiting for Caesar. They don't speak English. Caesar walks into greets them, and he's got a Taylor ham, egg, and cheese in the bag and a cup of coffee, and they're looking at the bag like, that looks good. Because nothing smells quite like Taylor ham, egg, and cheese. So Caesar comes, lets them in, asks them to stay, goes back to the deli down the street, buys them each Taylor ham, egg, and cheeses and coffees, and comes back, and they eat breakfast together as their first gesture of solidarity. That to me says a lot about Caesar, man. He wants to feed people, and that's how I did it. So that being said, I'm going to make it for you, right? Are we ready for this part yet?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see it.
We can go back to the Jets, Karen.
You want to go? Are you a Jets fan or no?
No, I didn't know who any of those people were either. I'm like, what are you?
No, I'm with my friend who just likes making fun of me. That's what he is.
Especially when I'm just as vulnerable. I had no idea what they were talking about. Right? I know.
I was like, Lisa Marie, you take this one. I got the next interview.
That's right. Hey, I'm a Giants fan anyway. Giants. Big Blue.
I'm a big time Giants fan too. Right. I had to interweave a little bit of the Giant talk in there. But.
I did. I noticed that, and I appreciate that information.
Andrew, I'm very interested to see how you do your carbonara, because I know there's a couple of different tips or techniques that I have read online, because carbonara is something I've been trying to perfect under quarantine here. So I'm excited to see how you do this.
Yeah, I've had a lot of carbonara in quarantine. It's like my go-to food. What I'm gonna do is first get the pasta in, obviously. You gotta put a lot of salt in your pasta. I'm sorry. I mean, it should be like the ocean there, right? And this is just a regular old spaghetti. That's what I had in the cupboard. I need tongs, excuse me.
So, and just, for anybody who doesn't know, carbonara is basically, well, since we were talking about bacon, egg, and cheese, really, at its most basic level, it is bacon, egg, and cheese pasta. But the idea is to have a nice, smooth, silky sauce from the raw egg, not to cook the eggs and get pasta with scrambled eggs. So that's kind of, it's a simple recipe, but it needs a technique.
It can't be any more simple. It is literally 4 ingredients, not counting the salt. It's pasta, bacon in whatever form you choose to use it, cheese and egg, right? And a little pepper, 5. Because the pepper is the carbonate. This is a Roman dish that we believe originated out of the rations that the American soldiers had left over in World War I when they were stationed around Rome. So they had bacon and eggs and cheese, in the American packet, and the Romans turned it into carbonara.
Of course they did.
Pepper to add some blackness, because the people who worked the mines, the coal mines, used to eat it. That was what they fed them, right? So carbonara is carbon. All right, I'm gonna get my timer going here so I don't do this. This is one of the times we cook about like just a little bit short of al dente. I know we like these days to cook our pasta like a minute or 2 short and finish it in the sauce, right? I don't do that here because the sauce isn't warm. This is a room temperature sauce, and here's the sauce. This was in my fridge as of yesterday, right? Eggs. We all know what eggs look like, right?
Yes.
The key is this big bowl, though, right? Equipment is the key to getting things right. I need this big bowl here to make this right? And you'll see why. I'm gonna whip in some pecorino romano, right? If you got Parmigiano, it's okay, but the Romans do pecorino, right? I'm just saying, whisk this in. Whip. Remember that dance, the whip and the names? Whip.
Yes.
That's my COVID brain just flashing back to weird things.
Yeah.
Watch me whip. You want to know? I bet your viewers want to know portions, right? I think of this very simply, right? Pasta is a pound for 4 people. You need a quarter pound of raw pasta per person, right? Typically, for this dish, it's even more simple. It is literally 1 egg per person and a quarter pound of cheese per person. Did I lose you guys? Okay.
Yep, we're good. Yeah. We were just giving you the full screen.
Enough of this guy. Get out of here. Cut him off when he's whipping. So I'm whipping together the eggs and the cheese, which is fun. Simple.
Now, Andrew, are you using bacon, pancetta, guanciale? What pork product are we using today?
That's a great question, Karen. I knew you were going to ask it. I'll show you. Typically, for my pasta dishes, I prefer guanciale, which is the jowl of a hog, right? If you Google my name and guanciale, like 8 stores of them. I'm like the guanciale diary guy. It is the jowl of a hog, which is cured. It's the best fat for pasta dishes and for other dishes too. Are you looking for a lipid to reduce and cook things in? Guanciale is the best. Guanciale. Guanciale. You can find it now at your Jersey pork stores, etc. Your specialty stores. Pancetta works as well. I prefer guanciale to pancetta because there's more fat in guanciale, which makes it better. That is a good thing, right? But I'm using actually what I had in my fridge, which cooks are prone to do, is a pork belly. I was going to make porchetta, but instead I used it for this. Woo! Look, it's falling apart. Can you see it?
I can see it. It does. It looks beautiful.
If I pick it up, it's going to break, right? Oh!
Wow.
This is all the skin on top, right? Which is beautifully crispy, right? And all the fat drips off the top and cooks the belly. This is all the belly, right? I know. I just want to
I know, right?
How much you give me to eat it all right now?
I'll be right over.
Chug, right? It's just delicious. And what I also have by doing this, the slow rendering of the belly, is I have all these drippings in the bottom of the pan here too, which I'm going to use as well, right? So my pasta's cooking. I'm killing time here between pasta cooking. It's got 3 minutes left. Oop, I just spilled some pasta water. You do want to mix your pasta while it's cooking, so to make sure it's not sticking, right? That's one of the reasons I put all that salt in there, is to keep it from sticking, but you also want to give it a twirl, right?
Yes.
While I'm letting this cook, I will tell you that I have a sequel to Cucina Tipica coming out in March, right? This is kind of crazy in that, novels take like 2 to 3 years to write for most people, right? Me, a little bit longer. I'm a little bit slow, right? When the lockdown happened, I was like, I can't, I was working on something else. I said, I can't do this. I have to go to Italy every single day. So I sat down every morning and wrote the sequel to this, every day, with the exception of maybe every 2 weeks I take a day off, right? And I wrote the whole thing in 6 months.
Wow.
I contacted my publisher and they're like, actually, we have a spot in March for publishing. You want to put it out in 2021? I was like, oh, hell yeah, right? So this book was conceived last March. It'll be published this March, right? The sequel to this, right? And it takes place in Rome, where they have carbonara. That's, there's a segue here. And it is just like the predecessor, full of food. I mean, they go sort of tramping around Rome looking for some ancestry, but they're really just eating their way through Rome, and it's really, really fun. Okay, I'll come back and I'll talk about it in March. Thanks for asking.
Hey, Andrew, while you're mixing up over there, we actually got a comment from one of our Facebook viewers, Sue Corletta. Can't wait to receive my pre-ordered book, a fellow food-loving Glenn Rocker. Love the bacon, egg, and cheese analogy.
Nice. Who's it from?
Sue Corletta.
Oh, hi. Have fun. Yeah, I'm having a really good time sort of connecting with Glen Rock here back on this particular book too. Just because it's set in the town, and I fictionalized the characters for the most part, but drew from some of them too. And I'm getting lots of fun sort of hometown support from my Glen Rockers, which I really appreciate. It's a great town. Okay, I'm gonna put a little carbon in my sauce, and I'm almost done.
Very nice. Yes.
So I know.
I'm curious again how you use the bacon drippings. I have my, again, like I said, I have my own way of putting this all together, so I'm always curious to see how other people do it.
Yeah, this is gonna be good. I'll show you. Okay, so here's the key. I've got they're perfectly emulsified, right? It's just cheese. Remember, it is 1 egg per person, 1/4 cup of grated pecorino per egg, right? And it's a perfect consistency. And it is room temperature, so again, I can't finish cooking this in here like I would with like a bucatini alla matriciana, where you finish the noodle in the sauce, and the noodle absorbs the sauce. This isn't like that, right? So I got 52 seconds here. I'll dance for 52 seconds. What should I do? Let's talk. Who should I bet on in the Super Bowl? I didn't even catch that part. I didn't know who was playing.
Well, we're gonna find out this weekend who's in the Super Bowl.
It's still playoffs.
Still playoffs. Hey, the guy from the Packers, Aaron Rodgers. He's Black Irish, right? That's a type of character. They're of Irish descent with black hair and blue eyes. He's Black Irish.
Oh, really?
Here's some football chat for you.
There you go.
I never realized that.
Such a jock. Here's the key. Look, I'm going to take these noodles. Right. This has been sitting on the pot. It's like super hot. Right into the pan, and I'm not gonna drain them, right? I'm not gonna shake them. I'm gonna go right from the pan here, right? This is the key. You can do a little draining, but I want that pasta water in here. It's gonna thicken the sauce. This is one of those things that makes restaurant cooking better than home cooking. Most home cooks don't know that you do this, right? You take it right out into the sauce, right? That pasta water has been fortified through the starch that was released from the pasta, so it's a thickening agent, right? Oh, and it smells so good. And I'll get the bacon in later, Cara, I promise. Putting it in. This is going to be my breakfast.
I wish it was my breakfast.
No, I know.
I know. Now I haven't eaten yet either. Now I'm inspired. I'm like, do I have enough to make this happen this morning?
When are they going to invent? I mean, they've invented so much. Like, I'm sure in the future there's going to be a way for you to cook and then, like, through the computer, give it to us. Right?
I'm going to put it in some device. It's going to like
a transporter.
Yeah.
All right. So while Andrew mixes, really brief story. My dad, we grew up on Star Trek because my dad's a big Trekkie and my brother is absolutely brilliant. I've been telling him since he was a kid. I was like, you need to make that transporter thing happen.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Yeah, because I'll never come up with it.
Yeah, it's not going to be me.
So I'm getting a nice pepper aroma here. Right? If you see how creamy that is, right?
Yeah.
Right? There's no sauce like dripping off it. All the sauce is adhering to the. This is kind of messy, but all the sauce is adhering to the noodle. It's a perfect sort of balance, right? You don't want those sloppy sauces. I'm going to plate it. I'm getting to the bacon. Don't worry, Carl. If I was feeling more adventurous, I'd do that fancy plating technique where you put it in a ladle and
where you make it a nice little twist.
Yeah, but this is breakfast.
This is breakfast. Well, actually, and it's so funny because we talked before you came on, Andrew, that I had Lydia on the show, and she did a breakfast risotto, which was actually very similar. With bacon, bell pepper, onion, egg. So there's always kind of something to be made with these simple ingredients.
Yeah, and one of my favorite, absolutely, and one of the things, if I can just digress for a second about breakfast and Italian food, is when I make pasta at night, right, and there's leftover, if there's ever leftover, right, I often make spaghetti pie out of it for the next day. So you just take your leftover pasta, crack a bunch of eggs into it, whip it up, and then bake it like a frittata. We call it spaghetti pie. Great. And congrats on having Lydia on. That is huge, right?
Thank you.
Andrew, how do you stay so trim with all spaghetti pie? I mean, how do you do it?
I think it's about portion control. I think you eat, the right amounts of food. You eat healthy foods, right? I avoid sugar at all costs, right? I don't put sugar in my coffee. I don't drink soft drinks, right? I don't even really eat dessert unless I'm at an occasion. I think it's a matter of what you choose to put in your body, right? I think healthy foods. I mean, I can't eat this every day, right? But healthy, foods in moderation that come from places where you know where they come from, right? That are well raised and proper portion allows you to sort of indulge in eating well without sort of feeling like burdened by it physically or emotionally. I do believe that like a huge part of our mental health comes from how we eat, right, and how we take care of our bodies, what we put into our bodies, right? And it's an important part of my day. If I ever wrote a memoir, it would be called "Killing Time Between Meals," right? Because I'm just so about food informing my existence, and it's important that if I'm going to be so into eating, that I do so well.
Yeah.
Okay, so I chopped up some of the pork belly already. You see the cracked ones on top, right? And there's a layer of fat and a layer of meat. Oh my God! I need to cut you off here in a second. The last step. This is what we call as gilding the lily, right? I'm going to take some of the drippings.
I knew those drippings came in somewhere.
I'm sorry?
I knew they came in somewhere.
Oh, yeah, right. So I cooked that pork belly on a rack, right? Collected the drippings. I'm going to take those drippings, and anoint with them, right? Not too much. I don't want to be gross. I'm not like, eating like a fat smoothie here, right? I'm just drizzling on top to add a little extra unctuousness to it. Then I'm going to sit down and eat it once you guys leave me alone.
That looks absolutely beautiful. It looks delicious. Andrew, where can folks buy your old books, your new books, your upcoming books? Where are we headed?
All the books are available at the regular places, right? Amazon, Barnes & Noble. I'm always a big advocate of purchasing from small bookstores. If you can, support them, especially now. Most bookstores probably not going to have my books on the shelves. They have limited shelf space, but they're available through all major distributors and a traditional publisher. So all they got to do is ask the bookstore owner, if they don't happen to have it on the shelf, just to order it. And they can have it in a couple days. Everybody prints on demand these days, so they can get it that way. Or of course, there's the old regular Amazon, Barnes & Noble, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. My website has information, andrewcotto.com. I'm on social media. I follow everybody back. I love interacting. So, I'm probably the most extroverted writer in the world, as you're figuring out at this point. I love to interact with people. So if you want to follow me, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, it's always Andrew Cotto, one word. I'm there. My website, my YouTube channel has videos of all the readings that I did from my kitchen and the aperitivo hour. Has me reading in Italian. One of my books is translated into Italian. I read from that on the website. They're all there. I got to eat now, guys.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I don't blame you. Thank you so much, Andrew. I always enjoy talking to you, and I hope to see you guys see you again soon. Hopefully, when the new book comes out in March.
Yes, I'll look forward to seeing you guys then. I'll make fried lamb chops.
That works.
Awesome. And send some over this time.
I hope so. We'll do it in person, okay?
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks, Andrew. Kara, well, this was so much fun this morning. I mean, we had a little bit of everything. We had politics, we had sports, we had food, we had feature stories. So we give it all right here on the New Jersey Morning Show.
We absolutely do. And now that I am starving, I don't know about you, I am ready to go have some breakfast myself. We have to thank all of our guests today once again for joining us. We always appreciate their time. We appreciate your time for watching. And Lisa Marie, once again, thank you so much for helping me out here and doing this with me. And our producer, Gerald, we always appreciate him also.
Yes, Gerald, thank you for putting this together. And we will see you next Friday.
Absolutely. Next Friday morning, live at 9 a.m. Good morning, everybody. I'm Kara DeFalco.